Hello and welcome, everybody. We're just going to give people a minute or so to join. Then while we're waiting for folks to join, let's just take a look at who's in the audience today. We're joined by people from more than 20 countries today and have people from a variety of job roles, including alumni relations professionals, fundraising officers, partnership managers, marketing managers, and more. So I'm going to kick things off. Thank you for everybody for being with us today, and especially thank you to our guest speakers, Marissa and Mike. As we go through, please be aware that you can ask questions throughout the webinar at any time. There's a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll leave some time at the end to answer questions and get back to you. If we're not able to answer questions, we'll get back to you offline. So with that said, let's get started. My name's Mitch Howe. I'm a customer success team lead here at Hivebrite. And I'm joined today by Marissa Lara. Marissa is the Live Más Scholarship Project Manager at the Taco Bell Foundation. She's passionate about helping young people achieve career goals, and she's been living out her passion by managing the Taco Bell Foundation's Live Más Scholarship Program for the past 5 years. In her time there, she's enhanced the Live Más Scholarship selection criteria, awarded more than $20 million in scholarships, developed and fostered an online community of 1,500 plus scholars, launched a mentorship program, and helped create leadership and career readiness resources for the Live Más Scholar community. Also have joining us Mike Nemeth. Mike is the head of digital experience at CoLabL and is dedicated to maximizing engagement and results with dozens of corporate and community partners. Before CoLabL, he led and managed large-scale intranet projects, developed innovative employee engagement campaigns, and elevated diversity and inclusion by leading efforts to launch resource groups at multiple points throughout his career. Mike worked on the build and rollout of the Live Más Scholar Connect program, which is on Hivebrite, in partnership with Marissa, and continues to drive engagement through ongoing challenges, programming, and community enhancements. So thank you both for joining today. Marissa, I think we're going to start with you. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the Taco Bell Foundation and the Live Más Scholarship?
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. The Taco Bell Foundation is the nonprofit arm of the brand we all know and love, Taco Bell. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to break down barriers to educate and inspire the next generation of leaders. And two ways that we do that is through organizational grants to community and youth-serving organizations and the Live Más Scholarship. The Live Más Scholarship is our flagship program, and the scholarship is available for consumers and Taco Bell restaurant employees ages 16 to 26 who are pursuing their education at any accredited 2-year, 4-year, or vocational school in the United States. And the really cool thing about our program is that we are a passion-based scholarship, which means we're not a needs-based academic or athletic-based scholarship. We don't ask for grades, test scores, or essays. All we ask is that applicants submit a 2-minute video telling us what their passion is, how their education will help them pursue their passion, and how they plan to use their passion to help others and make a positive impact on this world. To date, we have a little more than 1,500 Live Más scholars in our community. And as you can imagine, all of our scholars are extremely passionate and ambitious young people who really want and feel called to use their passion to ignite change in their local communities and beyond.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit more about the Live Más Scholar community, the mission of the community, and then really what makes it unique from other programs?
Yeah, in addition to kind of our unique application process, I think what's really cool is our mission and kind of our goals with the program. Most scholarships out there really focus mainly on the financial support aspect. They cut a check, say good luck, and send the student on their way. And at first, that is really what we did too. However, after surveying our scholars and really listening to their wants and needs, our goal and mission with the program has evolved. And now our overall mission with the Live Más Scholarship Program is really to be more than just a check, because we know that it takes more than just funds to be successful in college. And we also know that it takes more than just college to be successful in your early career, which is why we work super hard to develop additional tools and resources to further support our community Live Más scholars. resources like mentorship, career development tools, financial literacy, resume reviews, networking opportunities, access to exclusive events, and access to our online community, which is what we're all here to talk about today. And I'm super excited to share more about the fun stuff that Mike and I have been up to.
Great. So before we jump into the next question, I think that we have a poll that we're going to pop up here. So we just want to know from the audience, what was the main blocker if you have an online community today, or if you're hoping to have an online community, what was or is the main blocker for getting buy-in for a community? Budget, internal buy-in, lack of manpower or human power, or something else. So really looks like lack of internal buy-in is kind of the leader in the clubhouse here, which really, that's great because it leads into my next question for you, Marissa, is how did you get that internal buy-in to really build the community?
Yeah, I think we might have a little bit of an unusual case because getting internal buy-in was fairly easy for us. And that's because the ask came directly from our community of scholars, which is awesome. This was something that they requested when we actually first launched the program back in 2016. They wanted a place where they can get connected with other LiveMoss scholars, potentially meet up with scholars who lived in the same area, and even collaborate on projects together. And we tried to satisfy this want early on with the Facebook group. And this worked in the beginning, but as our program continued to grow and our vision for being more than just a check really started to become a reality, we knew that Facebook wouldn't last for long because we needed a platform that could do and really be so much more for our scholars, which is why we partnered with CoLabL and Hivebrite to create what we have today.
Great, and we're thrilled that you have. So I think we have another poll question that we are going to pop up here. Really simple, yes or no one. Does your online community have a dedicated community manager? Love seeing that. Well, oh, no is making a strong push here. I spoke too soon. All right. Well, Mike, we're going to turn it over to you now. Yeah. Speaking about community managers, that is one aspect of your role at CoLabL is you're managing this community. And I have to say, from working with you, you do an absolutely wonderful job on it, just managing the platform on a day-to-day basis. Can you just take us through the relationship between CoLabL and the Taco Bell Foundation? How long have you been working together?
Yeah, sure, Mitch. So I joined CoLabL, as in the intro, I joined CoLabL early last year, but prior to that, obviously with the experience in intranets and building out communities and that sort of thing, this was kind of a natural fit initially because CoLabL's been working with Marissa and the team at Taco Bell for many years, obviously like over the summer programming, and all of the other efforts that are put through to kind of like really engage the scholars as much as possible. This was kind of like that one piece that Marissa was talking about a little bit earlier that's kind of been missing from the puzzle. And it was just really kind of like the right time. It just felt like the timing kind of aligned with like so many people kind of being at home at that time as well. It kind of became top of mind and it kind of elevated the efforts as well. So I think what happened is it really kind of came down to the right timing and obviously the need that they've been asking for this for years. So our relationship, well before I started at CoLabL, but now joining CoLabL has now evolved into like this community management type role where, as you said, Mitch, this is not primarily the only thing that I'm responsible for. So I can't say it's 100% of full-time always working on the platform. But it's having that line of sight of keeping an eye on what's going out there, getting a pulse from the community, what's going on, is there any new chatter, that sort of thing. So this relationship's kind of evolved a little bit from not only just the programming that happened years prior to me joining CoLabL, but now with CoLabL, the community management piece that kind of keeps that conversation going all year long, which is the core. That's obviously the piece that's kind of like really pulling people into it and not just, hey, here's 3 weeks of fun, but we're not going to talk to you the rest of the year, right? So in order to do that, like you said, we kind of created this partnership where we found it to be super important to keep a pulse on the community. And that's kind of really what we're doing.
Marissa, how did you and the folks at the Taco Bell Foundation really decide this is the path we want to go, where we really need somebody in the community day in and day out? What was that decision? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, first, I think it's very important to note that a lot of work goes into like launching an online community, not just the buy-in parts of it, but also like creating the strategy on what you're going to be communicating, creating a strategy on how to get your community on a platform that they're probably not already on. There's so many other social medias. So a whole lot of work goes into it. Luckily, Hivebrite makes things pretty easy with a lot of the out-of-the-box features. But really, if you want the community to be engaging and long-lasting and a long-lasting success, then it's going to take a lot more work to keep the community lively and active. And that's the primary reason why we decided to dedicate a community manager. We needed someone to help come up with the fun, engaging content and to keep the community active, because quite honestly, our team didn't have the bandwidth, and the last thing we wanted was to invest all this time, money, and energy into launching an online community and seeing engagement drop after the first 2 to 3 months. So luckily, we've had this Live Más Scholar Connect launch for about 7 months now, and engagement has only increased since we first launched, which is amazing. And that's all thanks to Mike and his amazing work that he does at really creating an engaging and inclusive and really fun environment and platform for our scholars to communicate with each other, and also stay in contact with us and attend a lot of our really cool programming pieces and events.
Awesome. And I agree wholeheartedly with that. We have a lot of clients who there's this perception that if you just create an online community, people will show up and they'll just keep showing up. And community doesn't really work like that. Something that you touched on, there's so many different social media platforms that people can be on, or just things to do with our time, when we've got a phone that we can just stare at. So Mike, I want to ask you, your audience is much younger than you or I, and very much digital natives, always connected. What are you doing to keep them connected to the platform and staying engaged on a daily basis?
Yeah, great point, Mitch. I think we kind of knew that from the start. We obviously had insight into who our audience was, which was great, because thinking of who that audience is, you can kind of craft your approach to how you're going to build a community and manage it moving forward to engage an audience of that type, right? So Hivebrite comes with all these features, right? Like all these different like tools and features and functionalities that you can add on to the system, which was cool. But at first, like looking at everything, it's like, wow, this is kind of overwhelming just to like open this system up and have like, let's just turn everything on and like let everybody go to town. That's probably not going to work, right? Like I've seen that happen before, and it's just like, kind of like you said, Mitch, if you build it, they will come. That definitely does not work. Like you got to, if you build it and you engage them, they will come. That's what I would say in respect to that. So it's thinking through like, what were kind of some of the key components of the community that we could really kind of try to get the most impact right out of the gate with, right? Without flooding them with like a system that they go into and there's 25 navigation items and, I don't know what this does. I don't know what this does. Let's kind of like trickle the features in a little bit. And as we do it, especially with a younger audience, make it very quick to just pick up, open it up, and kind of know where you need to go and what you need to do. You should not need a guide on how to use a website. Like it should just be intuitive. It's 2022. If you need like an actual walkthrough of how to use a website, you probably need to look at the design of the website a little bit closer, right? So we wanted to make it as easy as possible and even rename some of the features, which again, great functionality within the platform that you can go in and say, for example, we'll talk a little bit about what we branded as Scholar Scrambles, right? So like these Scholar Scrambles, we're kind of using the news feature in Hivebrite for these Scholar Scrambles to engage folks. And we'll talk through those a little bit here. And that's like one of the pieces that you were asking, Mitch, like how are we engaging them, right? Like visuals, obviously having a design. I just think it's a unique situation because just coming from like design background and web management and that sort of thing, we could kind of like package this all together to kind of give like a full experience. So now this actually feels like an experience when you go into it, right? So this was like part of our arrangement with Marissa and the team initially is like, we want these kind of draws to the community every month coming in. We kick off these scholar scrambles, which are kind of more or less kind of like a contest or kind of a giveaway that we're running, and we give away prizes with them. So this is obviously a pull into the community, but at the same time, accomplishing the mission of ensuring that everybody kind of gets to live and fulfill their passions, is kind of like the root of kind of what Marissa was talking about earlier with the scholars and everything. So that's kind of what these do. We kind of use these to help fuel the passions. One example is we're playing in the Black History Month this month a little bit, which is obviously super important, not only in that respect, but this month's theme was like Black health and wellness that's going on. So we kind of just kicked this off and branded it Music Heals the Soul. This is nothing more than just a news item on the platform that kind of encourages folks to kind of share their thoughts through the comments. And it's just a little bit of a different way of using it. So what we're getting is like, not only is everybody kind of sharing and participating in this Scholar Scramble, which is really about sharing artists that kind of inspire you for Black History Month, but you get to learn a lot through that as well, right? Like there's scholars learning from each other. Somebody may post an artist that not many other folks have heard about, and they'll come in and be like, hey, I know who that is too. And it just kind of creates like this natural dialogue. And obviously there's like the contest component of it too. So we run these typically at the beginning of each month for about 2 weeks, and we'll announce the winners on the platform as well and celebrate them. And kind of took it a little bit further, even with this competition for this month, is that we're having like an additional prize on top of what we give away that's also supporting like Black-owned small businesses, which kind of all like really kind of just plays into the whole purpose of why you're doing this anyway. So you'll see a few examples here where we kind of try to tie in like relevant events that, again, if you're on your social feed, if you're on other apps or you're engaging on TikTok or whatever you're doing, you're going to know that like these other types of themed months or things that are going on at the time, are going to kind of be top of mind. So we try to pull them in with that as well. But I think it's really like, I look back to the one where we actually had, which I think this one was great, Marissa, as well, but the scholarship applications, whenever that window opened, right? Like we pushed out a competition to say, hey, for all the scholars who are already on the platform, like, why don't you go out there and like share the love, tell us why, what this getting the scholarship has done for you, what this means to you. And why don't you, share your thoughts through like a TikTok video or out on YouTube or wherever you want to do it. And then post it out to Hivebrite as well for like additional promotion. And then we'll select a few winners from those who've done that as well. So again, you're accomplishing multiple, we try to like look at this as like hitting everything in like multiple avenues, right? Like you're sharing the creativity that the folks have initially, like you're kind of seeing that through the media and the way that they're actually sharing this information. I mean, you might have some that are like producers or musicians or what have you. So you get to like put your talents in action. You get additional exposure. There's other folks at the Taco Bell, outside the Taco Bell Foundation, and even outside of that, that'll pick these pieces up and elevate them on a higher level as well, which is super cool. So that's really kind of the way that we tackle this, is really kind of look at it as like giving folks like what's top of mind, what's key right now, like what's hot, even some of the programming that we're doing right now. Like you're thinking like we tie a lot of programming into this as well. So we use the events module and Hivebrite for that also. And promoting those right now, people are thinking about summer internships, like maybe an upcoming, like you're going to be applying for jobs. So we offer, CoLabL offers some programming around that as well, which we tie into the system. So like Marissa said, it's all these individual pieces that kind of like make up the community. The platform's great, and it's the vehicle for us to be able to do that. But then kind of that added layer of like ongoing continuous engagement is kind of what's driving that. And as a matter of fact, we're working through kind of a slow decommission of Facebook right now. And through that process that we just kicked off like a week ago, we've just had like another 30 folks kind of join the platform that weren't on there initially. So I think with our first batch, Marissa, that we went out last year when this first launched, and there wasn't really a lot of content on the system, we got about 50% of the scholars on the platform. And now our hope is just to continue to see that drive up with the Facebook decommission coming.
And adding on to this too, so in addition to kind of like speaking their language as far as like having really fun and engaging, incentivized challenges and posts and theme, like related to a theme. Another thing that we did, especially early on, and we're still doing now, is hitting them on different channels. So knowing that this platform is still new, the push notifications are great, but if they're not used to going to this platform, they're probably not going to be first to check those notifications. So we hit them with emails and text messages as well. So if there is a challenge, we'll hit them with an email letting them know the challenge it has launched and it ends on this day, and encouraging them to go log into the Hivebrite platform and participate. And we also hit them with text message reminders whenever we do have an event and things like that. So it's important to not, I guess, silo yourself to only speaking to them on this one platform. I think you'll have a much further reach if you use other communication channels as well.
I think that's a great point, Marissa. Just, you know, think about how many unread emails you have in your inbox. You know, if the only means of communication is email, there's maybe a 50% chance that somebody sees that, right? Like, it's just about getting people notified in as many different ways as possible. So I'm going to skip ahead and we can go back to talking about measuring the community. But you brought up a great point that really this was your first go round in an online community like Hivebrite. So this really was a pilot program this past year. What did you learn over the last 6 months, and you know, what are you planning on changing? What changes are you applying for the future?
I guess I'll start with that, Marissa. So
yeah, go for it.
I could hit a few pieces that I think kind of we're starting to see kind of play out over this time. So obviously, like with this being the pilot, we've had the other platform, which was Facebook, that was used before as the alternate method for folks to kind of communicate and engage. And I think, you know, initially, because it was a pilot, we didn't go real hard out of the gate and just say, we're cutting off Facebook. You need to be on Hivebrite day one. This is the way it's going to work. We kind of did more of like a slow trickle into it, so it didn't feel so forced. But now we're starting, you know, even just as far as like a week or two ago, you're starting to see like this uptick specifically because of that drive to get folks to come to the platform. But now we actually have a platform that has significant content on it. So I think what's hard, like right out of the gate, is you don't have all that content. You don't have weeks of dialogue and competitions that people can see that's happened before, and resources and videos that you've put out there. Like, it was very minimal out of the gate. And we were very grateful out of the gate that the limited content we had, we still got a pretty good pool of folks, especially during the summer programming last year, that were really in there, right? So that was obviously like that first push. That's when you see the most usage. Everybody's going out there, they're seeing what's going on. And then you kind of find that you have like this core set of, I kind of saw like repeat visitors that are going to continue to come back because they find it, they find the platform, they're curious about it, they're interested, they like the networking aspect of it, and they're going to continue to come back to it because of that. And I would say the ongoing competitions that we continue to do, we saw those work so well last year, which is why we partnered this year to basically say we're going to continue to do that every month on a reoccurring basis and just kind of package that into our programming for the year. While there is obviously a significant uptick in programming and events that we're going to have in the middle of summer when you know the main event's happening, the rest of the year, we kind of like started to build all these individual pieces in that really is the primary pull into the platform. And what that does is, you know, folks will go out there and they'll say, you know, they might get the email alert, like, be sure to join us like next 2 weeks or whatever, and we'll announce the winners and stuff. They go out there, they're going to see other things. We try to strategically position like events that are like, you know, we call some of the like career focused events or professional development, and any of those sort of kind of themed events, and even themed events around their passions in the system, which we identified because of customizing their profile. We can tell, hey, there's like a large group of folks that are really into like the medical profession. Maybe we should have like a specific track for them that we host this year. So we saw those work very well last year. I'm trying to think, Marissa, like right out of the gate, I don't know if there's anything that we did initially that we said, this isn't really, it didn't really work and we cut it. I think we're just continuing to kind of roll with the few limited features we initially rolled out. And now we're starting to try some of the additional, some additional functionality on the site, right? We just rolled out groups. So we're going to allow folks to kind of create their own group around their own passions or their own individual, perhaps like geographic location or what have you. So we built in a group request form that folks can go out and request a group to try to get a sense, like, why do they want the group? What do they want it to accomplish? And trying to get a pulse, and also letting them know that if the group doesn't get a lot of activity, we're probably not going to keep it out there. Again, going back to the community management piece, you just don't want this to turn into like, a messy system with a bunch of unused features on it. So the more usage we can get out of the core features that we see on the site, we're going to continue to drive that.
Right, and adding on to that, before we actually made the platform available to all of our scholars, we launched with just a small group of scholars, we call it our advisory group. And we really kind of ran all of our ideas past them, like, hey, what do you guys think about launching groups? And that was something that they were kind of hungry for before we even talked about groups. They're like, hey, it'd be cool if we can have groups and we can meet and chat with people who have the same passions or in the same area. So we kind of always have our finger on the pulse with our scholars with this advisory group. We're also constantly looking at the data. So what challenges are getting kind of the most engagement, which events are getting the most attendance, and that's kind of helped guiding us. Again, we've only had this for about 7-ish months, 6 to 7 months. So we're really starting to kind of paint a picture with the data on as far as how can that impact our future programming, whether that's timing wise, knowing that, hey, okay, summer is a really great time to talk to our scholars because they have a little less going on, but summer only for these specific 4 weeks because semesters and quarter systems all kind of start at a different time. And once they start making their way back to campus, they're not going to pay as much attention to us anymore. Another thing is the different topics we want to cover. We last week or 2 weeks ago, we had an event focused on leveling up your summer internship. And we had a few panelists speaking on how to come up with a great resume, how to nail the interview, and giving tips and tricks on all that kinds of things. And that had the highest attendance for our non-summer related events. And so knowing that, like, okay, students are really looking for programming focused on getting them ready for life outside of college or getting them ready for their next step in their career. And so knowing that, we can then go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what can we do to further support this kind of want that they're hitting us with?
While we're kind of on this, I see a couple questions coming in on the chat. Mike, can you just talk real quick about what the Hivebrite modules are that you are actually using or that you started with?
Yeah, right out of the gate, a few of the pieces that we used initially that we thought were super beneficial, obviously events right out of the gate, right? Because our programming was key to that. You can elevate the events and pin them to the live feed, so folks are coming in, they're seeing that. I can't recall the name of the feature right now where you can actually put like a system alert along the bottom. I can't remember the technical name of it, Mitch, where you could put like a little pop-up and they have to like, right? That comes in handy for kind of like top of mind things that you want to try to hit folks with, like that's maybe coming up short. So we use that a bit. Resources, we branded we called like the media center like resources, but we created an entire section under resources called skill builders and created these little micro learning modules, video-based modules that we kind of host in there as well. So love that we can host all that or even linked off to them from Vimeo that we do as well. It does a great job. Portfolios we did not initially. I'm kind of like looking at the site on my other screen right now. And I'm like, portfolios is not something we did initially, but I probably would have. And that's where like, it was one of those features. And I take back something I said earlier about one of the features that I think coming out of the gate, portfolios would have been great for this audience. I just wasn't sure that when everybody was building their profile, they're going to be loading all these materials into their portfolio on their profile. Well, they did, right? So we ended up just with hundreds and hundreds of like, you have artists, musicians, everything I was talking about before, folks who attended events with photos from it, posting all this stuff to their portfolio. And then I started to realize like, there's really a lot of content out there. It would be really cool to expose this and let everybody else kind of see it at a high level. So we did bring that on board, but we didn't initially launch with that. And then obviously like the Scholar Scrambles were like the huge pull, right? That was just our way. We still use the news module that's built into Hivebrite for news, but we kind of focus more on the Scholar Scramble piece, because if you go to Scholar Scramble, it automatically shows you all the Scholar Scrambles. If you want to see any of the other news or community updates, you can see them as well. We're still kind of fleshing that out. But the news module was obviously huge because you can pin that to the homepage. And then along with the news, it's almost like every time I create a news item, I'm creating like a campaign in the email communication, because like we use that as another vehicle that goes out also. So it's a little bit of double work, but it's very similar, again, in previous positions I've had on any system, right? Like you kind of have it and post it in one system, you maybe share it out in a little bit of a different way in another system to kind of get them in there. And then you have your homepage as well that pulls them in. So those were really the key features. I mean, the member directory that's a no-brainer. I mean, this was primarily for the networking opportunity, see who lives around me, maybe we can get together. And we've had some folks kind of connect that have been local through the platform as well, which is really cool.
Awesome. So let's go talk a little bit about how you're measuring success. So that's the question that every community has to justify. How do we ensure that we keep getting funding to keep the lights on? What are the KPIs that you're looking at and reporting on to say, yes, this is actually working?
So this is something like right out of the gate last year. We did not have this arrangement to really kind of dig deep into the metrics initially, as we were kind of working through the pilot and fleshing through kind of like the adaptation rate of like the folks who are actually coming into the platform. Is this even going to be something that they're going to use? Once we started to see this kind of go into action and they started to use it, and I apologize, most of this information here is very blurred out for everybody just for sensitivity purposes on the CoLabL side. So we don't want to share, core details too wide at this point, since we're still kind of fleshing out the details. But what we did is like our partnership with Marissa and the CoLabL team is decided like monthly, and this is part of like this is brand new. So we just came out with this last year. We actually did not do any kind of like deep dive reporting the first couple months. It was more just anecdotal, like looking at the system, seeing how many people are in there. This gives us more of like a snapshot as far as like, how are the active users looking in the system? Are we consistent? Are we going up? Are we going down? Is anything driving that up and down? A lot of our metrics, like we really look at, there's a lot of great numbers you can get from the system, right? Like page hits, media center hits, those sort of things you can get. I like the email campaign metrics, which are great as well. That'll give you a pulse on like, are folks looking at what you're sending out? But beyond that, like we spend a little bit additional time kind of digging into the data a little bit more, so in that there's areas that you may not even be measuring that are outside of Hivebrite that still have an impact within the platform itself, right? So like one of the examples would be the challenge we did to post a video. Well, one of those scholars like posted one of the videos about here's why you should apply for a Live Más scholarship, and it had like 22,000 views. I think just that one video on TikTok, which was insane. She was an influencer, so it obviously helped that she was already an influencer and had quite a base, but it was a super cool video about why you should apply for a Live Más scholarship. I would have never seen those numbers if I was just looking at Hivebrite, right? So like Marissa said, because we're pairing this with so many other vehicles and other ways to kind of keep, folks within this like whole ecosystem of social media apps, this kind of starts to begin to feel like that is like part of the network of apps that they're using as well. And that was key as well. Going into this, you just were not sure if this was going to take off. So when we're looking at metrics every month, we're always looking at like, what are additional opportunities we should be looking at to impact certain areas of the site? Are there features? Maybe it's time to turn them on. The advisory group, have we talked to them recently? And if we did, like, what are they thinking about a certain direction that we want to go? So we're including like a lot of text-based feedback on here as well, which I think you need on top of the numbers to kind of just explain the numbers. Numbers are great too. And I like to see the amount of posts going up and comments and that sort of thing. But you can also see trends. This is actually helping us now that we're doing this to kind of see trends during the school year as well. So you'll have certain months when, you'll definitely see a drop off, and you can attribute that to, finals or whatever it may be at that time. You could kind of like get a pulse on what's going on, and that might help you plan in the future for when you're doing certain events, to be a little bit more strategic around the timing of them when you do that. So I think going in for this first year, we're still kind of like fleshing out how all this is going to look and what we want our monthly scorecard to be, but I think we're headed in the right direction. And we always, which Marissa outlined at the beginning, like these community goals: foster connections, enhance resources for the scholars, and fuel their passions. We always keep those like top of mind in everything that we do. So if we're doing a scholar scramble, or if we're doing an event, like, are we aligning to the goals of this community? And that's what this was built to do.
I think that's, you hit on a great point. Oh, sorry, Marissa. Go.
Sorry,
no.
I just wanted to add a little bit to it. So we haven't been on the platform for a full year. So again, we're still learning and still gathering all this data. And I think what's important to note is this community platform hasn't been a norm for our scholars, really. So getting them onto the platform is one thing. But what I'm really looking forward to this year is in the spring, we announce our new class of LiveMoss scholars. So this is going to be the first time where the scholars meet us for the first time, essentially, and we hit them with, hey, congratulations, you received X amount in scholarship dollars, and you also get to join this exclusive community where we have this online platform for you to get connected with all the other scholars and have access to additional resources. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see kind of that. We start with them with day one with this is the norm, and see what that kind of engagement creates on the platform. So because there's a little bit, I don't want to say like learning curve with our existing community or our existing group of LiveMoss scholars, but it's kind of getting them used to being on LiveMoss Scholar Connect and letting them know that this is a place to go for all of our LiveMoss scholars. So getting them used to that, and once we get our new class, they'll kind of be started off at day one with that as their norm.
Awesome. So before we jump into the Q&A, and people, there are some questions in there. Feel free to keep popping questions in there and we'll get them answered. Mike and Marissa, is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to make sure we do talk about?
I'm sure there's lots. We could talk for hours, Mitch. There's obviously tons, but I think some of the key components around getting creative with the system, limiting your initial launch features, working on continuous engagement, like those themes, I think kind of carried throughout everything that we discussed so far. So those are some of the key points.
And listening to your audience. I think we wouldn't have this platform today if that wasn't something that the scholars came to us with. And every month we're looking at the data, we're looking at the engagement and thinking about how we can better serve our community of scholars, whether that's directly answering one of their kind of asks, or looking at the data and saying, hey, this is something that they aren't necessarily asking us for, but the trends are trending that this might be something that they're interested in. So really keeping a pulse on your community and not assuming that what you think is right, because you could do something that you think is going to be super popular with your audience, but may not necessarily be true, and you'll put all that work into launching something that isn't actually going to be interesting or engaging to them. So always listen to your community.
So Marissa, let's dig into that a little bit more, because we do have a question in the chat kind of about that. You said that the scholars themselves requested a community. What ways are you continuing to gather, direct feedback from scholars? Is it is it a
honestly,
form? Are they just pinging Mike? Like what does that actually tactically look like?
Yeah, it's a mix of quite a few things. So again, kind of the indirect part of it of looking at the data and what that tells us, but also early on, we did survey our scholars quite a bit to just kind of better understand who they are beyond their 2-minute application video and what their wants and needs are from a scholarship provider. So surveyed a lot in the early stages. Recently, we've gotten creative with I guess, polling or surveying during our events using fun and engaging surveys, not your usual like Survey Monkey or anything. So we use Slido, which Mike brought that to us. It's a really cool platform where you can ask questions and it puts all the answers in a kind of fun and creative way. And it's really simple. It's a QR code and they can just type in their answer, select from a drop down. So it's a lot easier than sending an email to them and kind of waiting on their response while they're at an event. Hit them with a survey then, because you've already got their attention. So it'll take 45 seconds, if that, to complete a survey. That's the other thing, is keep it short, simple, and make sure you're asking the right questions. Mike, is there anything to add to that?
No, that's definitely key. I think to your point earlier, like listening is like the single most important thing you can do when you do these platforms. Like if you think you're gonna like just run it, like this is what I think like I would do if I was them, and you're just gonna do it and not listen to anybody, you know, you might end up disappointed, right? So, and it made me realize that when we actually had direct feedback from a scholar who said, I've actually never been on a system where like, no matter where I post something, no matter what I say, I'm getting a response and like people are listening to like what we want to do. Like everything, she said everything that she's said that she thought would be great on the community, like it's happened. And if you give folks that, like, that's the sense of belonging, like in a community, right? Like that makes you feel like you're not just out there randomly talking to like the metaverse or whatever, right? Like you're actually like out there and people are listening and reacting to what you're doing. That goes back to the community management piece again. You just can't have like dead air with people out there like looking for answers or looking for connections and just not getting any, you know, not getting any pull from it. So listening to me, definitely like one of the key pieces that Marissa brought up.
We've got a question. Do you have a bot on the platform that users can provide direct feedback? I think I'll answer that. No, Mike is the bot. He's better than a bot. He's the human that's taking all of that. Marissa, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, because the question that's been in here the longest is, what makes a great community manager? So I'm going to ask you to talk glowingly about the things that Mike does that make your life and my life easier.
I'm going to turn my camera off now while you do.
Well, that's easy to do because Mike is great. I think one thing that he does really well is coming up with these fun ways to communicate with our scholars. So again, we had the Facebook group, and in the past, we tried to come out with a comms plan on like, okay, here are like the different things going on different times of the year, but posts just weren't getting engagement. We weren't getting comments, likes, people weren't doing anything. So I think Mike's idea to really come up with the Scholar Scrambles was kind of I want to say revolutionary, because without that, I don't think we would have as much content from our scholars. And without that, it wouldn't have made our community feel as open and welcoming. I think giving them the opportunity to say, hey, anyone can participate in this. We want to hear from you. We want to see pictures of you and your mentor, someone who's inspired you. And that kind of pushes them out of their comfort zone to like, okay, I'm going to participate in this. And then maybe next week when I land my internship or something, I can share a post about that. Or if I want to get connected with one of our scholars, I feel comfortable posting on the homepage. I think that is one thing, is making, Mike does a really great job at making our scholars feel comfortable on the platform. No matter what the post is on the home feed, he'll go and like and comment on it. And I think that is what feels extra special to our scholars is, I mean, anyone, right? When you post on social media, you in a little bit, you kind of want a little bit of engagement. You want some likes, you want a comment or something. And I think that is something that Mike does really well. He's always making sure that the scholar feels heard, and the initial likes or comments also creates further comments from other scholars. So then it becomes more organic. And so Mike is kind of setting the standard of, hey, we don't want this just for you guys or for us to share news and updates. We want this for you guys to engage with each other. So if someone posts something, yeah, comment on it, give them words of encouragement or build off of it, ask other people how they feel about this topic, whatever it is. Yeah, I think that is really what Mike does the best, is kind of knowing how our scholars talk and how he communicates with them in such a fun and engaging way, and creating this inclusive environment that makes our scholars feel safe and welcome to actually post and share about themselves beyond what they would normally do on like our Facebook group. Because honestly, our Facebook group ended up becoming more of a, I guess, a forum in a sense. If they had questions about their scholarships or having an issue with disbursement, it became less of a kind of a social platform. They weren't sharing about themselves, weren't sharing about their passions, weren't asking to collaborate with other scholars. And we see more so that kind of content on LiveMoss Scholar Connect than we did on our Facebook group.
Awesome. Anything else to
So
add, Mike?
great.
Do you want to brag
I'll
about
take
yourself
it
for a minute?
I'll take it. No more, Mitch. No more.
All right. So we talked a little bit about Facebook. Can you talk about your plan to move off of Facebook and how you're going to encourage users to stop using Facebook and move on to LiveMoss Scholar Connect?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a slow trickle. So we actually just announced this week that we will be shutting down the Facebook group before we announce our new class of LiveMoss scholars in May-ish. So we let them know early, say, hey, this Facebook is going away, this Facebook group is going away, but the really cool thing is we have a new platform, LiveMoss Scholar Connect. We hit them with kind of like an info one-sheeter that I converted into like an image that they can see alongside my post on reasons why LiveMoss Scholar Connect is so cool. And honestly, kind of not really giving them a choice on this LiveMoss Scholar Connect is going to be our only platform for you to get connected. But the really great thing is that it's a really cool platform. And I also put kind of the ask out there on any of our scholars who are on both platforms to comment and share what they like about LiveMoss Scholar Connect. So that's also an important piece. I think having other scholars talk to or speak on how great the new platform is and why they like it so much makes those who aren't on that platform feel like, oh, okay, maybe this is something cool and this isn't just something CoLabL Foundation wants me to go on and it's not going to be fun. So having someone who has had experience with the platform speak to it is also a nice plus. But it's slow, so it's going to be, we're probably officially going to shut down the Facebook group in late April, early May, just to give everyone enough transition. And at the same time, we're going to be hitting them with a bunch of communication. So this isn't just going to be the only Facebook post that I do and then delete the page. It's going to be every couple weeks we'll post. We'll also be sending emails and text notifications to let everyone know what the new norm is.
Yeah, Marissa, your text notification system too, you do a great job with that, because anytime there's like, you know, we might have an event coming up and we're trying to do like an extra push, we'll do the text notification too, because Marissa has a system in place on her end that she uses for that. And we almost always see like an additional, either additional registrants for an event or additional folks participating in something when the text message goes out. So kind of goes back to that, like multiple vehicles to hit folks with, you know, it's just, you can't hit everybody with just like one vehicle and just assume that that's going to work for everyone. So you try to flex it a little bit and give options on how you can pull them in without trying to like inundate folks with every possible means that they have. So you don't want to be too overly communicative in certain respects, but yeah.
And one thing I forgot to mention too, what makes the transition really easy is the mobile app. So Hivebrite,
Totally.
I don't know how you guys do it. Our mobile app is like 100% branded LiveMoss Scholar Connect. So you can go onto the App Store on your iPhone or Google Play Store and literally search LiveMoss Scholar Connect, and it feels very seamless. So if you're used to being on the Facebook group on your phone, it's just a simple download. And a lot of the features that you've seen on Facebook groups are on LiveMoss Scholar Connect, but also so much more. So I think that's a really nice feature, is the mobile aspect of it.
Awesome. No, unfortunately, the text message system is not within Hivebrite. Great idea. And we'll talk to the team about that. But I know that's a pretty complicated tool that's a little bit outside of community management. Let's see. From the point of launching your platform and the final date for deleting the Facebook group, what was the time exactly? Did you wait until you had a certain adoption rate? The Facebook group's still active.
Yeah, I would say that we had probably about 40% of our scholars on Live Moss Scholar Connect, meaning that they've created their user account and have logged in at least once or twice, a handful of times, and quite a bit of active users from that 40% as well. And after kind of our first few months with our summer programming, we really saw what the platform could deliver for us, and that's when we made the decision on, okay, it's time to focus all of our energy into making this platform the place where we're putting out all our content for our scholars, connecting our scholars to each other, hosting events, all of that great things. And it just really didn't make sense to keep Facebook around, because if it was already dead, it was going to become even deader because we were going to be putting all our energy into Live Moss Scholar Connect and wouldn't have the time to kind of, I guess, duplicate our efforts on Facebook. It just didn't make sense. So I would say after summer, which was like what, 3 months of programming, is when we really decided, okay, we're going all in on Hivebrite and Live Moss Scholar Connect, and now it's time to come up with a plan to put an end to the Facebook group. And the reason why we picked to kind of keep it that long, to keep Facebook alive for that long up until April or May, is because it also coincided with our Live Moss Scholarship application process. So we didn't want to shut down the platform during a very important time where we communicate with our scholars a lot, reminding them to submit the renewal applications, asking them to promote the scholarship to their friends and family. So we didn't want to take away that channel of communication while we still needed it, which is why we want to say goodbye to Facebook before we introduce our new class.
Awesome. I think we've only got one more question in here. So last call for questions, get them in if you have something outstanding. And Mike, I think you probably answered this, at least in passing. Can you share other ways you engage with the community in addition to the Scholar Scrambles?
Yeah, I would say obviously Scholar Scrambles #1, right? Like that's one of our main kind of monthly drives. But I think events is right up there as well, right? So I talked about that a little bit, where we promote our targeted facilitated events that we work with Marissa and a team on as well, around professional development, around passion areas. The key is delivering events that they'll want to go to based on their interest. And I think so we obviously get some pull from the events as well. So when they're in there with the events, they'll obviously engage in other activity. The idea though is I would like to see even more organic content, and not necessarily just always coming from, the Hivebrite admin or whatever. We'll have these kind of core things that we'll continue to do. But I love when I go into platform and I just see an organic post about somebody that's trying to, raise money for a cause that's super important to them in some creative way that they're doing it. And then other scholars potentially even partnering with that person, which we've seen recently as well, to actually help them fulfill their passion through one of their passions. So it's these organic connections and ways that folks are just kind of going out there. It's not only are these ways that we're pulling them into the system, but once they're in there, does it encourage them and give them enough guidance to say oh, wow, I should maybe next time I post something, I should think about posting it on Scholar Connect as well, right? We're starting to see a little bit more of that, where you'll just see a post kind of pop up and you just get really excited because you're hey, I didn't plan that. This is great. And that's kind of what you want. It's just not going to be as natural as, some of the other social media products that folks are using that are just on there all the time, right? So but seeing those types of things happen make us feel like it's headed in the right direction.
Awesome. So just taking a look, I don't see any more questions. So thank you everybody for your questions and for being here today. And Marissa, Mike, once again, thank you so much for all of your time and everything that you do for the community. We'll share the recording of the webinar by email. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to respond to that email and we'll get back to you. And I think we just dropped a survey link in the chat. Would definitely appreciate it if everybody could just take a minute to give feedback on the webinar. And on that note, Mike, Marissa, thank you one more time. And I'm gonna shut down.
Thanks, Mitch.
Awesome. Yeah,
See you,
thanks for
Marissa.
having us, Mitch.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.